Hey guys, welcome to the Tetra Health and Performance Podcast. Today we're exploring youth development and we're talking like adolescents, how to train them, how to help develop them to become the best human they can be and the best athlete they can be. And today we've got Grant from Sunshine Coast Strength. They've run some beautiful programs up north, and I think this bloke's doing a great job with the kids he has in, and we're really looking forward to pick his brain and what systems they use and how they're developing these great athletes. So welcome to the podcast, Grant. Love to hear a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, look, I suppose you're right. We are absolutely working in that youth space at the moment. I suppose to give you a bit of background about myself, I grew up playing rugby league and rugby union here on the coast and in Brisbane. And sort of as I got through my career, I wasn't particularly big or strong or fast or anything like that. And I think it held me back in terms of my progression. So, around sort of when I was in my 20s, I had an ankle injury and sort of found lifting through the rehab process and fell in love with it. That was during an off season, so never went back to actually playing footy, significantly anyway. I played the odd game here and there, but yeah, from then on started powerlifting. So I fell in love with that. And we actually, opened the gym 2.5 years ago nearly, just at the end of COVID, end of 2020. And we were planning on being this amazing powerlifting space. And since then, I've sort of really found a passion for helping youth athletes get I suppose, the benefits that I missed out on myself growing up playing footy and playing sport.
Nice. What age bracket is considered like that adolescent youth athlete?
Oh, look, I mean, personally, I look at the, young kids. So we've got our youngest members 9 years old. And we then progress all the way through to sort of 18, 19 is where I would see that youth athlete. Obviously, that changes depending on the person as well. You could be 20 and have never trained, and we're going to sort of treat you a little bit more like a youth athlete in that aspect, just due to your training age as well.
Nice. I love the story. When you said that you experienced getting into strength, and I think this is a very common way of people experiencing it, actually through a rehab space.
Yeah.
So initially, like maybe getting an injury, then realizing that you can actually build everything up outside of training. And how do most of your clients come to you when they're looking to pursue kind of an athletic career or get better at their sport?
So I think at the moment, it's through some of the word of mouth that we've got. Initially, we did some marketing. We wanted to create that youth athletic development program, we call it. And the initial aim was to bring rugby league players through in that sort of 14 to 16 age bracket. I've been volunteering on the coast in a strength and conditioning capacity through different clubs for a couple of years as well. And so we've sort of started to build a bit of a name that way. So worked with a local junior rugby league club, transitioned into their senior rugby league. So I've been S&C there for 3 years, and then moved into the rep space with the under 16s and under 18s in the last 2 years as well.
So what I'm kind of getting with there is like, what
Yeah.
kind of expectations do you also think that the parents have on their kids when they're bringing them in? So is it like, is it
Yeah.
the kids looking, because I'm thinking kind of along the lines of, okay, so you got told to go and train. Same thing happened with me playing soccer, where I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I had a knee injury. I need to start training. I need to build up the strength. And I think that
Yeah.
the interesting thing is about how kids start with their training experience, right? Is it the parent telling the kid to go? Is it the kid wanting to go? Because I think it's kind of a sad thing where kids kind of don't know this exists, and this is something at that age that you're saying,
Yeah.
they don't know that they can actually be doing something outside of their sport. It doesn't exist to them as such because it's probably just not enough, not mainstream enough yet. But hopefully in the future it becomes something that maybe is more mainstream. But is it normally, would you say, the same kind of thing as your situation where they may have had an injury and they're being told to come to you? Or is it more the parent being like, "Oh, I've just heard about this. I want my kid doing this." Or is it more like, is it ever the kid as well?
Yeah, I think almost from our perspective anyway, it's almost always the kid. So we're finding social media marketing, or even not even marketing, just social media, right? They all know who Chris Bumstead is. I don't know why. I didn't know who he was until 3 weeks ago. But I think TikTok and Instagram and YouTube are massive down that space at the moment. I think they're starting to see a lot of their, I suppose, their heroes that they see. Like, let's say South Sydney Rabbitohs, they're putting a lot of stuff on their social media about what they're doing in the gym space. The Broncos do the same up here, the Cowboys. And so they're seeing a lot of that as well. So yeah, we're sort of, on those social media platforms, and we find our interactions are almost always initially with the kids. And then the next step is talking to the parents and actually explaining to them and showing them that we're, a trustworthy gym. We don't, we've got to get past a lot of the old wives' tales with the parents up here. It's a bit different. That's going to stunt my growth, and I definitely don't help being 5'6", but I tell them I didn't start until I was 27, so I don't think it's got anything to do with the weights.
I think the whole idea of stunting growth is something that's definitely losing its traction now. It was originally a study, right? So there was an original study done on gymnasts, and with the study done on gymnasts, it's the best case of cause and correlation that exists in studies. It's where they looked at gymnasts and then they followed these gymnasts through their career, and the gymnasts later on who were professionals were actually all short. But really, all that tells us is that, right, like all it tells us is that the ones that were good at gymnastics are short anyway. If they tracked maybe high jumpers, they'd be like, oh, actually, strength training makes you taller.
100%, yeah, and that's, I think, exactly what you said. And that was my first thought as well, was that cause and correlation. Just because the gymnasts were shorter doesn't mean that the training they were doing caused it. So.
Grant, I got two questions just straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Your adolescent athletes that you have, are they all rugby league based? And the other question is when you do get your young athletes in and the parents in, what is do you have like an assessment protocol or some sort of education you're doing for parent and kid at the same time? Like, what are those first couple of sessions? What's those first conversations like?
Yeah, so no, we're not solely rugby league at the moment. I think initially we started, but what we've found now, and that was just through, I suppose, the fact that that was the area I was working. So we were getting kids in from the clubs that I was helping out at. But now we're finding that we've got, I think, 3 rugby union, we've got soccer, we've got an AFL, we're starting to progress down that path. We've got 3 or 4 kids that just come in and train. Like, they just want to be, they're not sure if they, like, a couple of them maybe looking at powerlifting, they think that's pretty cool. Some want to do some bodybuilding, but yeah, they're not, not necessarily specializing in any sport at the moment. They just want to have fun and ship some steel pretty well. So, and look, in terms of the second question, we don't have anything formalized like an FMS or anything like that. In terms of the parents, when the parents come in, I make a requirement. I need to talk to your parents. We've had, a couple of instances where, kids bring their mates in and, suddenly I've got some 14-year-old kid in here who's never lifted before and he's trying to bench, 40 kilos and he's about to die. And, so I'm, not too happy with that. So, from our space, I want to talk to the parents. I'd much rather have them being comfortable. So, I mean, we sit down and we talk to them about our youth development academy. So that's what we call it. And we're not, and I liked what you mentioned earlier when you were introducing me, is creating good humans. That's our number one key. So we want to create well-rounded athletes. We want to create good humans. So we bring in mentors from other sports outside of what they're seeing. We've got an exercise physiologist that comes in, does some assessment stuff on them at different points, but also talks about goal setting. So he's played Queensland Cup level and and higher, and so we've had some ex-Broncos come in and talk about their journey. But at the same time, we want to sort of sit down and explain to their parents that we want them to leave here as better people, making better decisions for their health, making better decisions for their fitness, not just about getting strong and getting jacked and looking like Chris Bumstead.
I think what you said a second ago about if the kids are on TikTok, and you got that wrong, and Instagram, and they're seeing. I love how the teams are actually showing what's happening in the background, because as a kid who didn't watch Instagram and TikTok and social medias and just saw them on the field, didn't get to see them training as much. You kind of just think like, oh, these guys are amazing, and they just got amazing that way. It's nice to see the hard work they're putting in the background, right, in the gym and like outside off the pitch. With that in mind, like, do you think like, is there ever too high an expectation when someone comes to you? Is there ever an expectation that, okay, well, this is what my kid needs to do and they are going to be like the best, or the same thing coming from the kids? Is there ever too high an expectation that you have to shoot it down, or maybe even the other way around?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. There's been a couple of instances where we've sort of been talking to parents who, like their kid's quite successful already, and they want to bring them in to help, that next step in their career, whether that be, rugby league and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, soccer, whatever it is that we're dealing with. I think for us, we try and explain to the parents, we're trying to get away from that specialization. So just if you're 14 and you're a football player, that doesn't mean you need to be doing, exactly what the Broncos are doing. Again, we talked to them about creating that well-rounded athlete and getting away from that, that side of it a little bit. And let's just try and help them improve, get bigger, get stronger, get faster, and that's going to help their sport, right? It doesn't matter really what sport it is. We can start to specialize when they reach that level. So that's sort of how we approach it. And look, don't get me wrong, there's probably instances where the parents aren't happy with that response. But in that case, we're probably not the gym for them, because I'm not going to lie to them and take them down a path that I don't believe in. So we've got some systems in place that we believe work, and we would much rather stick to those and be comfortable there and have the kids safe and moving well, than sort of give into a request that maybe isn't going to get the best results or could possibly run the risk of injury down the track. So
I love that, Grant. That's absolutely beautiful. I believe you got to master those basics right before you build up on that pyramid and have specialization. And unfortunately,
100%.
when you live in the social media atmosphere, all you do is you see those hyper specialized movements, and these kids start thinking they need to do these ladder drills or whatever these crazy movements are, that high end spectrum, when they haven't built those capacities to move properly, or the capacity to have a big energy system, and all those maybe less sexy things.
Absolutely.
With your youth academy, is that what you're looking at initially? Is it just teaching movement competency? Is it building energy systems? What are you initially doing when you intake your athlete? In is it individual, or is it just a set program that you guys use for a couple of weeks?
So, excuse me. What we do, I suppose we try and steer away a little bit from the energy system stuff, knowing that we're set up more for specific strength. So we can do a little bit of work around that, and we do take some kids out to the field and do some stuff there, or we work down that space. But we look at the reason they're coming to us, Sunshine Coast Strength, is because building their strength and their movement competency is what we're good at. We do have a set plan that we follow. Over the course of a block, we might run a 6 or 8 week block. I like to run longer blocks for kids. Sometimes we'll run a 12-week. And we have slow progression through that, rather than chopping and changing movements quickly, because that lets them really develop the competency in that movement. And then, we sort of follow a set process. So first session, I don't care if the kids trained somewhere else before. The first thing I get them doing, let's say we're talking squat, we're looking at a bodyweight squat through their warm up. So we've got a set warm up that every kid, every athlete in here does. It's, I train the same way, I do the same warm up. So we follow that warm up. We look at what they're doing, and we're assessing how they're moving as they're warming up. So it's a little more informal than something set. And then we're looking at their bodyweight squat. Once I'm confident and happy with how their bodyweight squat looks, we'll progress to a goblet squat. Then from a goblet into a front-loaded cable squat, which I really like. In its front squat position, but using a cable, we can I find that pull forward from the cable tends to force them to find a good position. And it also highlights any, issues that they might have in ankles, knees, hips. From there, we then progress into safety bar squat, front squat, and then back squat. So that's sort of a standard progression for us. And that could take a year. So we have two, tiers within our program. We have a development team or development squad, and then our elite team. And it takes a pretty significant time for me to progress these guys to elite, in terms of how we see it. And it is, at the moment, it's not formalized. It's something that I see, that I'm happy with their progression and moving forward from there.
And because you're looking at kids of a certain age as well, is there any specific issues you see with their movement that you pinpoint and be like, okay, well, I see this quite often? You mentioned one just yourself there, that they need to probably get their body weight back a little bit more than they are. That's probably why that cable squat helps. But is there anything else that you see straight away?
Yeah, look, we see pretty significant issues. I'm astounded at the number of kids that have got lower back problems. And a lot of that comes down to just sitting, not moving, and not knowing how to move. They don't move as much as we did when we were kids, for example. And I know I'm sounding like an old fella now, but they're not riding their bikes, running, jumping, climbing trees as much as we did. And so I see a lot of knee valgus. I see ankle problems because they're playing a sport, but they're not necessarily ready for it. And so we see restrictions in ankle mobility, knee valgus, which I'm not hugely concerned about, but it's something that, can become a problem moving forward. Their landing mechanics are terrible. I think it tends to be a lot of lower body stuff that we see problems with. And that's my focus, is trying to resolve that before we progress them to that next step.
I think
and
also
start
that
loading.
Yeah, I think what you just said there is really interesting. It's kind of like, and I know Kelly Starrett a while ago was big on this when he was talking about the chair and sitting. It's about how he'd watch kids run up to the age of something like 7 and 8 and be like, oh, these kids, they're like maybe more 5, 6, 7. And they'd look at the kids and go, these kids run fantastically. And then all of a sudden you get into that kind of older age school where they're sitting at a desk for much longer hours, and all of a sudden now all these kids move like terribly. And like probably something to be attested for why they have. It's actually quite scary that you say that so many kids have low back issues. So I don't think I ever experienced a low back issue as a kid.
It's funny that.
No,
me either.
Yeah.
All I remember as a kid is being sore after footy. That's it.
Yeah, I've got 17-year-old kids in academies that I'm coaching in the NRL academy level that have lower back problems, that have coaches that haven't really done much about them. Their mobility through their glute med, piriformis, TFLs are terrible. Like they're not flexible. They can't move. You do a little bit of work around that. I've been throwing some reverse hypers and some pigeon stretches at them, like nothing, world shattering, earth shattering. And they're, oh geez, this is the best I've felt in 2 years. I'm like, mate, you're 17. Like, how?
Yeah, they're like literally they've got the body of like a 40-year-old, right? And the response of a 40-year-old rather than like a young teen athlete. That's insane.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of it does come. Like I used to be huge on the Joe DeFranco podcast, and I listened to Kelly Starrett on that, and he did talk massively about that. In one of the first episodes that he did there, was around that standing desk and progressing. Seeing that exactly what you mentioned, that running. That as soon as they start school, almost you can see this change from the way they run, the way they move, because they're sitting so much. So, we try and counteract that as much as we can.
And then you look at, obviously, maybe where at school I would sit down, but then the second I'm out of school, I'm walking home, I'm running around, I'm jumping about, I'm playing with my mates in the garden or in the park. Whereas now I think a lot more kids are playing computer games as well. And like obviously that's back into the seat, sitting down again. So it's pretty just this extra time sitting down that we're going to see that more and more so in the future. So it's fantastic. There's places like yourself that can like get them kids in and kind of get them moving around even more. With that kind of what I was talking about expectations, I was kind of also interested in when you're looking at the kids. Do you ever notice that maybe the parents put too much expectations on the kids with their training, or the kids put too much expectations on themselves? And one thing I'm getting on here is like the joy of it. Like, do the kids like when they get in the gym? Are they loving that? Is it fun for them as well?
That's our ultimate. Like I suppose we want them to really enjoy what they're doing here, and that those parents, most of the parents that we're dealing with, they're actually calling me because they're concerned that their kids here too much. They're saying like, is that okay? Is that safe? Like the kids that we attract, they want to be here, and I think they bring their mates because they want to be here, and they've got this environment where we neg them a bit, we stir them up a little bit, we show them how to do things correctly, but at the same time we make sure that there's a level of respect and they understand how to keep the gym clean. Like recently I've had a surgery, and I had 3 of the kids coming in and they were vacuuming once a week just to help me out, and little things like that we've gotten kids jobs, we've helped kids out. Like we've got one kid working here on a traineeship now. We're really trying to sort of follow a similar model to what you guys have done. And I think the parents really appreciate that. Like they can call me and say, young Johnny's not wearing his helmet on the ride to school. Can you have a word with him? Because he doesn't listen to me. And that's sort of where we'd like to go. They enjoy it here, and they respect us enough to listen to us. I think
gives me goosebumps.
You're right.
A bit.
Yeah, literally. Too. I'm like, I love it. I think
Yeah,
there's two major points there, Grant. Like one is the cultural influence of your facility is obviously a very positive, beautiful culture that you've created. Again, I'm going to double question you. Number one,
yeah,
like what have you done like to harness that culture? And two, maybe explore more of this. I think the role of the coach is a powerful role. I love what we do. I'm so grateful to my job, but especially in youth athletes, because they're looking up to you, like the big Jack Strong dude that runs the gym. Like they're looking up to you at a higher level. Like this bloke's going to guide me into the direction I want to go. You actually have a bit more power than what you think you do. I think the role of the coach is quite impactful. A, physically, and B, we already talked on it a little bit earlier about trying to give them a little bit of life lessons, like
yeah.
trying to upgrade them a little bit to how to become better human beings. And like cleaning up after the facility is huge. Or like getting them a job, like that's amazing, mate. I just so much respect to that. Yeah, there are other things that you're doing to upgrade them as human beings as well.
Yeah, look, I think each kid's different, right? And we do treat them that way. You know, I suppose. Uh, what was your first question again? Let me
The first one
confirm.
was culture.
Yeah, culture. Yeah.
What do you
So,
do for culture?
look, it's just something we're really conscious of. We really try and be positive within the gym, and you know, we try and make sure that our adults within the gym are in the same mindset. So this facility is built around community. So I've got my daughter running around here. A lot of the adults bring their kids as well. We don't have a set creche, so you know, if you're doing a set and your kid's running around and you know in a crying or upset, one of the adults is going to grab them, and one of the kids is going to grab them and play with them too. You know, and we just set some expectations around that at different times if it's needed. And we do it in a bit of a fun way. You know, we let the kids connect their music when they come in. We give them that responsibility, and then we pay them out about it. But
This is horrible.
yeah, yeah, and then they do the same, right? Like I've got this little thing that I say whenever they, make an error. I always go, "Oh, bloody young fellas," bloody young kids. And it started coming back to me now. Like if I do something, if I trip over or whatever it is, they're like, "Oh, bloody old fellas," and that's cool. There's a line obviously we don't cross and they don't cross, and we're always conscious of that. But yeah, I think the community tends to build itself. The way we promote ourselves, the information we put out, the way we speak to people. I think I was listening to a podcast that you guys did a little while ago, and you were talking about community or culture being something that you can't define, and it is what it is in a lot of cases. And I think it's just built around myself and the other fellow that we've got in here, Abe Walton. He's fantastic, and he's a guy that he's a friend of mine, been friends for a very long time. And when we opened the gym, he was the first guy I approached to come and join and start coaching here as well. We're hoping to bring him on as a business partner sometime soon as well, so that's pretty exciting.
I love what you're saying there. I love that whole idea of culture and building it. And I think the gym does become like the third space, right? I've heard people mention this where it's kind of like you got your school, and all kids are going to do that, right? All kids are going to go be at home and they're going to be at school. You give them that third place where it's maybe not as strict as school, but it's kind of like maybe not as like with your family as home. So you kind of like you build these like different relationships in spaces like that. And I think just alone, what doesn't get mentioned enough about gym training is kind of the indirect lessons that you learn. You learn that things don't come easy. You learn that things come
Yeah,
with time. Like any good result that you want doesn't come next day. You don't wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I just put on tons of muscle." And most people would wish that was the case, but it takes time, and you got to keep working for it. You got to fail, then you've got to troubleshoot, and you've got to correct it. And I think just these life lessons, that if you can get kids in young and they can learn kind of like that kind of culture that you're providing them, and at the same time they learn all the things that just strength training just teaches you, it's just incredible.
100%. And we mention that to them a lot as well. It's the long term goal. So we're quite conservative in the way we approach things, particularly with our younger athletes. Like I'm generally a fairly conservative coach anyway, but particularly with our young athletes, it's a low, slow progression over a long period of time. Like I'm looking at 2 and 3 years down the track rather than now. And so, like I said earlier, there is some parents and some kids even that will come here and may want a fast result, and we're probably not the space for them because I'm looking at that long term goal, and that then tends to again add to that community, add to that feel, and the boys and the girls that train here understand that. for example, our youngest member, our 9-year-old Maddie comes in here and trains twice a week, and I don't think we've touched anything over a 1 kilo dumbbell. And that was me throwing her a bone because I know she wanted to use some weights. Like she's just sick of doing push-ups and squats and lunges and lunge walks and, things like that. But at the same time, she's just not ready yet. And until I'm honest with her, and that's something else that we try and do here. I said to her, look, I'm really stoked you're consistent. We love seeing you twice a week. But if you want to progress to this next level, I need to see you every single rep trying to improve your squat, improve your push-up, not forgetting that, we want to be looking in a certain way and moving a certain way just because your mate's here or you get distracted by mum walking past or, and that's that next level. And, and I said, I'm honest, I treat them a little bit more like an adult in that sense and sort of give them the responsibility of their own training and then their progression as well. So.
What's fantastic with kids as well is that their body weight is progressive anyway. Like they're getting heavier every day. Their limbs are changing. Like it's a little bit of a different stimulus every day alone. I think that's why body weight is such a fantastic way to train kids as well.
Absolutely.
Like, you're at that age, you can wake up in a new body the next day. Like honestly, you can change centimeters to an inch. Like puberty is a crazy thing, man.
Yeah. Oh, we talk about that a lot with our kids. Like obviously, in our space, right? We get lots of questions and we get questions around supplements, questions around food, questions around PEDs. And, one of the things that I say to all these guys is, mate, if you're eating enough and you're eating a good, healthy, balanced diet, you don't need any of that stuff. Particularly if you're a boy and not trying to create, discrepancies there, but gender is one of the things that we do take into account. Mate, if you're a 15, 16-year-old boy, you're on natural steroids. Like you're as anabolic as you can get with the amount of testosterone you've got pumping through your body, right? Like now's the time. Like you don't need any of that stuff. As long as you're eating enough to support your recovery, you're good to go.
And how cool too, like to have that. I wish I had that conversation or someone had that conversation with me at school, not just for training, but even get enough carbs and enough fuel to pay attention at school. Like, I even just think that translates their ability to have attention and retention at school as well, if they're just getting more fuel in the system. So A, from a physical standpoint, but B, from a mental standpoint, like you're just leveling them up with that conversation, which is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Mate, sorry, I just had my daughter just walk in. So it's all good. We're just in a minute, darling.
I'll take the moment to ask you a quick question then. You mentioned a couple of things. So you mentioned like you've got the kids that are a little bit older and they're getting the back issues and you've been able to resolve a few of them, which is fantastic. Any other success stories? Any other stories of kids either like, I don't know, like just increasing the weight that they're moving massively, getting better at their sport obviously would be fantastic. Anything like that that's a real success story for yourself?
Mate, honestly, we just tested. So the last this week, I've tested with my under 18 athletes at the Sunshine Coast Falcons, where I'm the strength and power coach there. And then we've also tested within our gym with our youth academy just yesterday. I think to me, it's really exciting to see that the conservative long-term approach that we're taking is paying dividends. But yeah, let's talk success. So we've got a young fella here. We call him Spud. So a lot of our kids get nicknames in here, and young Spud, he's 15 or just turned 16. Sorry. Yesterday he put, I think, a 20 kilo PB together on his squat on a buffalo bar, which is astounding. He did a 10 kilo PB on his deadlift. On his bench. And then another sort of 10 kilo PB on his deadlift, or nearly 10 kilos on his deadlift. I mean, the kid's 16, he's 80 kilos, and he benched 112 and a half kilos yesterday. He's squatted 125 and pulled 140. And he's done a 160 kilo trap bar deadlift. All of that belt free, and all of that within, roughly at an uppy 8 or 9. We're not trying to push these kids too hard. We had testing yesterday. We tested 5 kids in the gym and not a single rep missed. And they manage a lot of that themselves. Like I said, I'm there. Obviously, I'm suggesting weights to go to. But my first question after they say have an attempt and it looks pretty easy is, what do you think? What's your next progression? Would you go up? What would you go up? How much would you go up? trying to give them that understanding. We're slowly introducing RPE and reps in reserve to them as well. Just explaining we might do that through a bicep curl set to start with, something where it doesn't matter if they overshoot or undershoot too much. But the successes we're getting there are awesome. And then, some of the kids in the Falcon space are the same as well. I've had them for 6 weeks at, rugby league level. So I think it's the equivalent of maybe SG ball. Is that under 18s down there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had them for 6 weeks, and we're seeing progressions through what they're lifting. Some of them have, again, never front squatted. So, I mean, that's an easy win, right? We're 6 weeks of training front squat, and they're moving well. But they all want to bench press, and that's probably a key. Every single one of my programs has some level of bench press in it, because they're 17, 18-year-old boys. I think I'd get murdered if I didn't.
Mate, I think you mentioned DeFranco. We're massively influencing DeFranco in the younger years. There's a part where you got to feed the ego as well. Like, you got to pump their arms up, pump the chest up, giving them something they want as well as what they need, and just keeps them happy. And I'm still in DeFranco straight away. If you're lying across from someone with some thick arms and their shirt's looking pretty thick, it's intimidating. Like, you're seeing like a whippet versus someone built like a fridge. I don't want to run at the fridge, mate.
Yeah, and he says feel good, look good, play good. So that's kind of like the whole idea is like you do like there's a confidence and like we all know, like when you look at someone who looks confident, it's scary. It's instantly intimidating.
Absolutely, and we do build some of that stuff into our plans and our programs with our guys and girls. We want to ensure that they're well-rounded athletes, and part of that is looking good, being comfortable, being confident, as well as humble. And that's probably another bit of a joke that we have in here, but there's a couple of kids who don't mind posing in the mirror that we recently got. We finally gave in and got one. So I've made a bit of a joke rule and told them that until they weigh 10 kilos heavier than they do currently, they're not allowed to pose, because it's just not worth looking at. And little things like that. We just keep them in check a little bit and ensure that confidence is at a good level without being cocky. So.
That's again that cultural thing, mate. Coming back, that's good fun. I'm taking everyone's taking the mickey out of each other. Obviously, not overshooting. Just creates that fun environment.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of time that the boys at the moment are starting to rub my bald head and give me rubbish about that, and I just explain to them that that's their fault. Like, since I opened the gym, I've lost my hair, and that's on them. So.
I think a big part of being a coach, and maybe more applicable to the younger kids, is you got to know your materials, like your progressions and your regressions and your methods with strength training. But a big part of it, we've touched on this a couple of times already, is the psychology. Being able to understand what someone wants. Like, words are impactful. The words that you use and the culture that you create is quite impactful. And having that little bit of knowledge on psychology and human behavior is actually quite impactful, especially at these young informative years, to what direction they're going to go into. So phrasing, like, rather than jacking them up, like you said, long-term approach, rather than like, let's slay, let's crush every session, going, hey man, let's take this slow, let's be progressive. How do you feel today? Oh, you're feeling a bit off. Let's down-regulate this session, and using, just human behavior to kind of trick them into performing the best they can is such an important aspect as a coach.
Look, absolutely. And we take that approach even to the next step, where we bring in a breathwork specialist. And she, about once every 6 or 8 weeks lately, we've been bringing her in, and one of their sessions is just all about recovery breathing, down regulation. At the same time, like, it costs me money to run that session because I want to make sure she's making money. But I would much rather have, lose a little bit of money for one session and have those boys understand how to recover and how to get into parasympathetic as quickly as possible, and understand why we do that at the end of every session. So 99% of my sessions here with my youth athletes, we'll turn the music down. We get them to lay down with their legs at 45. We do some box breathing, some basic stuff, and we start, over the last little while, we've started implementing more and more techniques that our breathwork specialist, Kate Sawyer, has been bringing in. I think it's been had a big impact on them. And you're right, like, the psychology, the auto-regulation aspect is something we talk about a lot.
Cut out there for a sec.
Fine. That's cool. The advantage of that, auto-regulation is that we can pull back a little bit on that. We're not in a rush. It doesn't matter if we don't hit it this week. It doesn't matter if we don't PB. Let's do it in a month. So and like you said, that psychology aspect is important with that age group. They'll come in and they'll be kicking stones because they've broken up with a girlfriend, or had a blue with their mate, or their mum's annoyed them, or found a bottle of pre-workout that they weren't supposed to be taking and grounded them for a week. Or what do we have? We had another kid had his phone taken off him because found out he'd been getting a lift home with a girl that was a bit older, and things like that. So yeah, it all happens, mate. And I suppose we see it as our responsibility to then help them through that and understand how maybe that choice that they made wasn't the best choice. But it's also part of life, making mistakes, and how the gym can help that. Like, come in here, get around the group, have a bit of a laugh, and come out feeling better than when you came in.
Yeah, and what you're feeding them there as well is you're feeding them, like we've already discussed, how they're coming in, they're training, they're building they're building purpose, they're building like that strength, they're learning that things come slowly. And on the side, you just mentioned that you're getting them to eat better, like you're making them look at their nutrition as something that's going to accomplish a goal, and that's going to build, whether or not now it's the best fit, like the best thing, it's going to build habits that are going to last their lifetime. And then what you're doing there is you're feeding them some meditation as well. Like, I can't imagine. I hear about it a lot. I can't imagine how stressful it is being a kid these days. With like, whereas back in the day, like no one could catch your embarrassing stuff and it go on a camera and then get posted around and seen. Right? When you do something embarrassing, it's forgotten the next day. It's done. It's not on the web. Right? So you just imagine all these different things that are stresses for kids these days. And what you're doing there is you're feeding them that meditation. Like, you're teaching them how to relax themselves, and whether or not some kids are going to take that forever, you're giving kids a certain way to deal with their emotions. Is, mate, that's it. That's incredible. The fact that you can use that with use is like, it's such a fantastic thing. Like, well done to you. Like, because there's the research on that is so far and beyond. There's so much good stuff about it. It's just a shame that not many people do that. And I think if any population needs that the most, I'm going to take it straight to kids, because it's going to last their lifetime. Well done, mate.
And that's the key, and I appreciate that. I think part of what I suppose, I just had a bit of a moment when you were talking then, and I just thought, it's actually that we try and treat our kids or our athletes like adults in that sense. Like, a lot of people go, oh, we're going to go and we're going to get these adults to do this stuff and down regulate, and we're going to do breath work and that kind of thing, and they forget about the kids. And maybe it's a financial thing. Maybe they think, oh, well, adults can afford it, and kids can't. But I look at it as a long-term investment in our business, in their future, in them. Like, they're gonna, as much as I don't like being cynical down that path, but if they have an awesome experience here for the next year, they're going to come back. They're going to get results where they're at their sport, in their life. They're going to bring people with them. That's going to then translate into an even bigger community for us. And it means that we don't have to charge through the nose for that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, it makes, and you make a bigger systemic effect on the culture, right? Of inside the gym and outside the gym, which I think is most gyms, like what they're trying to create, right? Like, we don't want to just really affect everyone that comes in, but we'd love to affect more people outside, like from our local area to the wider audience as well.
So many adults
Absolutely.
don't know this. A kid goes home and says, "Mum, I did this breath work and I'm now relaxed," and this kid has anxiety. Mum's going to go, "What's this breathing thing?" Now Mum's doing it. Now Mum's friend's doing it, and it has that butterfly effect.
And it's more likely to trickle in that direction, right? Because Mum's telling the kids, you need to do some breathing and meditation. The kid's like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, the coach can do it, and then the coach gives it to the kid. It's, I see it as it's more likely to trickle up.
Voice.
Sorry.
Give me 1 sec.
All good, mate.
If I can sort that out.
Hey, pretty cool. Amazing work he's doing up there at Sunshine Coast. Like, far out. I wish I had this when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I look at it as you're kind of like doing, like you said, not treating the kids like kids, and like we like to think that we're not treating our general population like general population, right? We're treating them a little bit more like athletes. We're doing all them things, and you're doing the same thing, right? And like,
absolutely,
the stuff that works, right? It doesn't have to always. And you look at it from special populations of all types, right? It's just a slight variation of what actually works that is changed for that population. So it's kind of sometimes sad that kids do get a bum rap with it, because, and I think a lot of it is because of what's popularized, like a lot of it, the parents taking over the training, for example, sometimes, and they're not willing to go and get the education on it. They're more willing to look at what you mentioned it earlier, what some other athlete is doing, and they're seeing maybe this is the end of the line. It's like bodybuilders looking at what the bodybuilder's done when he's already 130 kilos of muscle. And it's like that's not what
Yeah,
got him there. That's not what actually got him there. He's doing special stuff now. And you've got to take it back to the beginning. You've got to get your bread and butter. You've got to work the foundations up, and that's what coaches are good at, right? They're good at spotting where someone's at, and then being like, okay, well, this is where you should start down your progress. It's not very different to everyone else. It's just this is what's
no,
best for them.
absolutely. And I think it was something you guys mentioned initially in your email that you sent to me, was talking about how we specialize, maybe look at SPP. Like, we honestly don't. Like, every single sport at their age, in most cases, they're going to, sorry, every single kid at their age in most cases is going to benefit from squat, bench, deadlift, lunge, overhead press, pull up, like unilateral work down that side, some mobility, like those kinds of things. Like, my programs are pretty similar across every sport we run. That's why we run our academy as a group. It doesn't matter what sport they do. And like you said, it was exactly the same in your space. Like, yes, there is some tweaks we can make and individualize based on the kid or the sport. But as a general rule, mate, if you're just starting out, you're going to get better as it is. So,
Yeah, and that the SPP side of things, that specialization side of things, is mostly done in their training and on the field anyway. And you're never, however much
absolutely.
that's why I can't, like, when I look at like ladder drills and stuff like that, I'm like, meh, because really you don't like it can be a waste of time, right? There might be a specific time when that's really needed, but it's the big stuff that's really going to pay off, and then getting a little bit stronger, getting on the field, then using that strength is where it's going to pay off the dividends.
Yeah, I would much rather spend the time showing a kid how to perform a good Cossack squat and complete a good Copenhagen plank, and then pairing that with a couch stretch, and seeing better results on the field with their running than I would doing ladder drills to improve their agility. And again, maybe that's just my lens that I've got through that strength side of things, but that's just I just feel like it's going to get better results long term.
I love this too, and I think like obviously us we deal with like more adults and of all mixtures of life, and you do have your adult populations and your youth athletes. We're just in the business of making better humans and
Yeah,
listening to like watching human behavior and human traits, whether it be from a strength point, a cardio point, whether it be from a nervous system point, whatever it happens to be. Like, we have these influences through a coaching lens and things that we can provide them, whether it be physical adaptations or just conversations. Be able to level people up as human beings is such a powerful thing and a pleasure to be able to do as a job.
And humans being so
uh,
diverse, you have to take a holistic approach to it, right? You need them little things from different directions as well, which I feel like you're doing extremely well.
yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like, I think it's I had a job prior to this job, and it was fine. I was working in an office in a project kind of space, and that was all well and good. But doing this every day, like living my passion and helping people, mate, I'll do that any day of the week. I'll pay people to do this. Like, I love it. The space that we're in, working with youth athletes. We've got a high performance skills academy over the school holidays that I've paired with a local group that runs, I suppose they employ NRL players and ex-NRL coaches to develop the skills aspect. And we've got S&C who's running sprint mechanic workshop at the same time, and I'm running a strength, I suppose, strength and conditioning gym sessions as well. Mate, we're working with 12 to 16-year-old kids, and in 2 days, right? You know this as well as I do. You're not going to get these kids stronger, but I've got a real opportunity to influence the next 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, of their training, and really show them the benefit that a gym can do. And I see that as my role in that academy for that 2 days. It's all about long term and benefiting and improving those kids. And again,
And
like you said, athletes as well, older athletes.
and I do think each athlete has their own like advantages in some ways whatsoever. So you get that one kid who just realizes you're doing something like that, and you get that one kid who realizes actually, well, speed is my best trait. You get the other kid who
Yeah,
realizes, oh, actually, strength is my best trait, and then you get the other kid who's like, actually, well, technique is where I win. And then you can kind of like, you're looking at two things, aren't you? You're looking at like, oh, well, let's take advantage of your strength because that's what's going to make you beat the player. But actually, let's look at your limiters and see how much we can bring them up on the side. So I love that. I love the sound of that. It sounds like it's hitting it from all aspects. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, and you're so right. I think I did hear on a podcast you guys did recently talking about working to somebody's strengths. And I think in that instance, you were talking about maybe imbalances left to right side, or unilateral work where you might you are going to have a stronger left side than a right side, or vice versa. And sometimes that's actually an advantage. Like I think you might have used the baseball pitcher analogy during that one, James. Yeah, to me that's huge. Like just because you've got an imbalance doesn't mean it's always wrong, or always needs to be fixed. So speed's massive. If you're quick, use it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just a physical thing as well. Like you must see that. You must see that these kind of kids who's like, oh, that kid's a born leader. Or okay, oh, well, that kid's a born playmaker. He's like he sees things, like he sees around it, like and like it's the ability to bring them things up in kids. Like you gotta try and spot that stuff, and then you got to try and build that up as much as possible. And the gym atmosphere, whether it be the strength side of things or just the communication side of things, you can spot that sometimes, right? Would I be correct in saying that you see that sometimes in the kids?
Absolutely, and at I suppose the next level, coming out of the gym and going into putting my rep footy hat on the weekend just gone, we literally ran a 3.5 hour session at the beach that was designed to test them mentally and see who our leaders are and see who can push. And the kid who maybe isn't the fittest, fastest, or strongest, but holy, he just kept grinding for 3 hours. Like that's the kid you want in your team. Like that's hard to drop that bloke because you know that if you just spend a bit more time with him, working with him in the gym or on the field, he's gonna put everything into it. He's gonna improve. And boys want to be around him, or players want to be around him as well.
Because that awareness is amazing, and someone having that outside lens to say, "Hey, mate, let's specialize in this area, or let's back off here and turn up these kind of attributes," is so helpful. So I think I know you've got a story on this, James, and myself playing, I was always a very average player, but myself hyper specializing in too much powerlifting dampened my performance. Being more of a multi-directional, I like to sidestep, like the palm, create second phase. I dampen that by trying to turn myself into a forward and just run straight and be big and strong. That's got messed up because that wasn't my game, but I tried to overplay that hand and I lost a lot of the qualities that I was kind of good at. And I kind of sabotaged my own game. I tried to turn into a different player than I was. I think, James, that you kind of needed a bit of help as a younger fella too, right? Through injuries, just got flogged with intensity.
Yeah, no, I was extremely fit. I was pretty fast, and definitely too much specializing. I definitely could have done as being a bit more multi-sport. I did have a go at every single sport, but at the same time, I never really focused on one enough. And I think I would have done really well multi-sport, especially with later on the injuries that kind of showed up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've all learned the same kind of lessons, haven't we?
Yeah, and you had your injury like with your ankle. Like it's to have someone there to kind of help you and guide you a little bit. It's massive, and you save years and years on the learning schedule, and you get to kind of stay in the game for longer and play to your strengths, which is such an important aspect of an athlete. Whether we said it's leadership, speed, power base, whatever it happens to be, the skills are diverse, and to have someone to help guide you and say, "Hey, mate, this is what you're really good at. You should really use these attributes going forward." It's a time saver and a great way to progress further forward.
Absolutely.
Right. Isn't it like the art of war saying there's 3 ways to beat someone? Heard that?
Sun Tzu.
No, I haven't.
Sun Tzu. So there's 3 ways to beat someone. You can overpower them, overspeed them, or the art of deception. So it's kind of like that's pretty much how most people on the field beat anyone. They overstrengthen them, they move faster than them, or they decept. And it's kind of like the things we're kind of discussing just then are kind of the things that you see in most in them 3 skills. Like you're running faster, you're stronger, like you're doing your strength training, but you got deception, which is normally your skill based stuff.
I suppose as soon as you say that, that makes me think of little Messi, right? So Messi, he, however, 10 years ago he was the quickest. Now he's a lot more cluey, and his brain, his game, how he sees the game is allows him to continue to do what he does without necessarily being that unbelievably lightning quick guy. Not that he's slow, but I think he's definitely lost a step.
You make such a good point there because, while he was so fast and hard to push him off the ball, he has got older. He is he's getting into the older age for a soccer player now, football player. And what he's had to do is he's had to change his game style, which still is incredible, right? So like so there's going to be situations. It's kind of like you like hurt your right leg, well, might have to get a little bit better with your left leg, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I like that. That's I think that's a really good way to look at it. Not that not that old Sun Tzu has many major problems, but yeah, like I really like that. I'm going to move that, probably steal that and use that for something in our gym at some point as well.
Just check it out first, because I do paraphrase again.
Mate, I'm the king of hyperbole, so don't worry.
Yeah, there you go.
That's good. I think what we're saying a lot of that too, like the old hard work beats talent. Like, yes, but like we can develop individuals that might not have the greatest attributes and still find cool skill sets to bring them up. And then on top of that, if you do get a talented like girl or bloke, and you can teach them these work ethics on top of it, holy shit, you've got a potent young weapon that's going to have some success going on in the future. Especially if you add those good human traits on top of it. Holy crap!
So you mentioned what's coming up with you? You mentioned that you've got some more teams coming in the future.
Yeah. So look, essentially, I suppose our next major goal is we want to slightly shift where we are in terms of continuing to work with youth athletes and teams. But within our space, we want to look to be able to influence them from a whole range of different areas. So within our strength and conditioning, we want to bring a physio on board in the gym here and help with their rehab. We want to have a remedial masseuse here that can help with some recovery. We're going to continue to work with our breathwork specialist, Kate from Blue Sky Mind. We want to bring her on a lot more. We're going to get some people in from wellbeing and goal setting and things like that as well. So our goal is to expand this gym space into a bigger facility and a one-stop shop for these youth athletes and really bring it on. Is that what you meant? What you're asking?
Yeah. I think that's fantastic, because only at the professional level do you get this whole team around you. And I think it's so good that now at maybe even at an amateur growing up, building up level, and to a general population level, that people can get that we have the resources now to build that for everyone. I think like what an incredible thing to be able to offer people.
I think you said you're kind of mirroring yourself a little bit of Athletes Authority, the gym in Sydney. Like they're fantastic for integrated services for young athletes to professional athletes.
And Melbourne now, they have a second.
Yeah. Awesome, great.
Yeah. And look, absolutely. And the Athletes Authority. Look, I was at a conference recently where Lockie Wilmot spoke, and he really impressed me with the way he spoke and his whole philosophy on integration and collaboration between the services. But it was something we were thinking about prior anyway, where I looked at a team sport, so working in team sports for a while, and I thought, at the representative level, we've got a defensive coach, we've got a head coach, we've got two strength and conditioning coaches, one that does on-field conditioning, one that does strength and power. We've got a physio, we've got a strapper, we've got a masseuse, we've got attack coaches, kicking coaches, and then we go and send these kids back, after their rep season's over, and they're on their own. And I just thought this is a real opportunity for us to really fill that space and go, we can provide that all year round for them, and really see a huge benefit in that local area. Like you said, really building up the Sunshine Coast and making it a sporting powerhouse is the goal that we have.
Do you have an ETA when you're going to make these transitions and when you're making these changes? Is it next year, the year after?
We're talking probably in the next 6 months. So we're looking pretty quick. We're looking at spaces currently. We're getting quotes on equipment. We're sort of going all the way down that path, and it's going to be pretty quick. So
sounds like you're going to be a busy man. Have you even less?
Mate, I've got a kid on the way as well. So
Mate, I wish you all the success, Grant. I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and what a buzz to be happening up in the Sunshine Coast. Like, be in the area. God damn, you have to check it out. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. Mitch, it's like I said, I think in the past, I might have said off air that you guys have been an inspiration for what we're doing here. And I think you guys can take some credit for that as well. Sort of the way you run Benchmark and what you're doing in your area needs to be commended as well. So, take a little bit of credit for the influence you're having up here.
Thanks, mate.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much.
And thank you for your time today, mate. It's been a fun chat, and I'll look forward to having a chat in the near future. And once your new establishment is built and you guys are kicking ass, we'd love to have another chat and see how it's all tracking.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Thanks very
Mate,
much,
thanks for your
guys. I
time
appreciate
today,
it.
brother.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.